So, Sudarshan, the upcoming ULIP, Unified Logistic Interface Platform, I want to get it right, will it boost the warehousing demand in the coming time?
So I'll give you a background on why government is also thinking of it, right? Why they're creating this whole multi-modal logistics parks across as well. So if you want to be an export economy, your tertiary or your logistics costs cannot be in double digit. Our logistics costs are right now in double digit, which is how China is right now. They are at single digit. In fact, I'll say sub single digit because it's less than 5% asset. So there's a big journey. So infrastructure is definitely one way. So this gives a perspective on how important government is also thinking for our exports to be as competitive, while our domestic consumption is also high. We need to also become competitive from other standpoint, right? Because if someone is importing something from China with the logistics cost and is competitive, then your domestic manufacturers can take a toll. So that's very, very critical from that standpoint to look at. So kudos to government for thinking very proactively. Big fan of Nitin Gadkari in general from a personal standpoint. One of those amazing ministers who really thinks about India, thinks about solving problems. And more importantly, many ministers think, but he's a guy who's executing it as well, right? So I hope there are more and more such people who continue doing that, making us more competitive.
Since you deal with commercial and warehousing segment, looking at India's future with impetus on infrastructure, manufacturing, growing demand, supply of chain, which segment would your investors give better yields, or warehousing or commercial?
So commercial as a sector, people take a synonym with office assets, right? So I think that's what you're quoting to. So technically, even industrial and warehousing is commercial real estate of sorts. What is not residential is all commercial. Our focus right now is on industrial and warehousing assets as a sector in itself, because we clearly think this requires a lot of investment to build that infrastructure, unlike office assets, which someone took that initiative. Let's take in Bangalore, embassies in the early days took the initiative to build, and from whatever 10, 20 million, 40, 50 million square feet, we are now at 800, 900 million square feet demand. We are at 250 million square feet overall of warehousing stock right now. Whereas look at China, it's at 11 billion square feet. Boston, as an example, is at 280 million square feet, more than what India's stock is. Just Boston as an example. Right? Chicago is a billion square feet of warehousing stock in general. So big shift required for, like I said, if you want to be competitive, you want to sell to the world. As an investor, you follow the trends and be an early investor in that. Like I look at a classic example today. What market usually thinks that okay, we are going through a huge energy transition where from thermal, coal, etc. to nuclear, we are now thinking of green, right? So investments in solar, investments in hydrogen, etc., which is happening. So one way to look at it is follow the world. Oh, let's go buy Adani Solar, let's go buy Tata Solar, let's go buy Reliance Solar for stock. Share price will go up, etc. to do it. Our perception is always look at the other side of the story. Let's look at who are the vendors for these companies and buy their stock, right? Buy their company, right? Because their growth journey will be 10x, 20x, whereas their percentage growth might be 10, 20% only because they're already too valuable from a company standpoint, right? So it's that whole gold moment which happened in California back in the day, right, where everybody went to find the gold when gold was discovered. The real winners of sorts were Levi's, were multiple banks which became banks because they said, "ठीक है, आपको mining करना है. Why don't you buy my things? Because this way your clothes won't get torn out and you can continuously keep mining whatever's worth," right? So that's how we look at it as well. So let's say when we invested in Hosur as a market, when we started building warehousing in the industrial space, nobody was there. I've got calls from right well-wishers at that point of time. We just started. Why are you taking such a bold call? कोई भी नहीं है वहाँ पे. We said no. I have conviction on the government first, conviction on that micro market which will do well as well, and that's what we did that, and we are very very successful from 2 lakh square feet now about 26 lakh square feet, more or less leaders in that particular market. So you want to continue being that. So we focus on that as one segment. One other segment which we are focusing on very heavily this year is hospitals, healthcare real estate. I think super under-penetrated. We are at 0.7 beds per thousand. Vis-a-vis China is 6 beds per thousand. US is about 5.5 beds per thousand people. I think a lot of awareness is happening. People are getting insured as well. A lot of insurance growth is also seeing, so which means people can now afford healthcare, which was not a case before. Tier 1 is where all the healthcare is. I think there's a large Tier 2 market who has more money than Tier 1 to afford healthcare as well. So that's one segment we want to cater to. Again, don't follow what the world is doing. We want to create a new market and build more value for our investors over a period of time. So that's our vision. Certain people who are not as risk takers as we may want to perceive ourselves as might disagree with our views, but our early investors who believe are sitting in that golden moment where they are sitting on upwards of 40-50% in terms of returns in just 2.5 years.
So I remember when you guys entered the warehousing segment, it did surprise everyone.
Yeah.
So the time you entered this market, not just warehousing, the time you started with the fractional ownership, from that time till now, would you mind sharing us how big the market has become?
So let's take this as my first asset, which we did pretty much in the pandemic. As such, I remember like a refugee, I crossed the borders from, I was in Chennai at that point of time to come to Bangalore to register the asset. So we were in that period. I think what we're doing is not something new. Everyone has bought assets together. Friends have bought assets together. Families have bought assets together. We solved for one thing, that let's buy real estate online first. And during that period when we were bringing the idea to the world, everybody was at home. So they have all the time to hear us out. Our early believers believed in us. So very, very thankful for them being that evangelist to make this industry in itself. But the thing was, if someone has to start today, like all the newer companies who are trying to start today, their challenge is now to get that attention from those investors. Right, so that has been our advantage. It's more about timing. We took a bold call like you said, many people were surprised that what are you trying to do in the pandemic? We took that early call, gut call, what do you want to call it, but that is biggest game changer from our end. And that has continued for us, right? So the first 1.5, 2 years of our business, we're 2.5 years old. 1.5, 2 years was about selling Strata to the world, right? Hey, we buy online, it's an SPV structure, you get CCDs issued. Many people didn't know what CCDs itself were, etc. Many people it was very hard for them to believe that real estate online bhi kharida जा सकता है. There can be a dashboard where there's so much transparency because they've never seen that transparency in their life. So that was the journey. To a journey right now where I don't have to sell Strata anymore because people know what Strata does. And now it's all about, telling about what this particular investment opportunity is, right? So our calls, which used to be for about 40-45 minutes, are now down to about only 10-15 minutes, right? And thanks to leveraging technology in multiple ways, whether it's doing webinars, recorded things on via YouTube where people can track, and multiple other things, has helped us to achieve to where it is right now. So from a market standpoint, I think collectively us and all the other players put together, we are at about 1,700-1,800, while we have a lion's share of 50-55%, 60% of the market. The intent is to continue having monopoly and grow this to 70-80% market. But at the same time, I want that 20-30% also to grow at the same time, because only then an industry gets created. We get a voice to work collectively and try to create an industry in itself and probably take it global over a period of time. Right? So that has been the journey from that side. Also, it was not just the journey on the investor side, it was also on the seller side. Right? So when we are talking to sellers, while we've cracked the code of selling online, we still haven't cracked the code of buying online. Right? Many sellers, because for people in India, real estate is very emotional even now. Oh, it's like my baby, I'm selling it out, etc. So they're like, no, I want to meet who it is going, kiske haathon mein ja raha hai, etc. So that unfortunately used to be, and many people didn't have conviction that you're yesterday's boy, you're a new kid in the block, you're a child, how can you buy 100 crore asset? You're coming in saying big things, but you have conviction, etc. So that was also one big, I would say a mindset change which now sellers also have. We have large developers, like literally tier 1 developers coming to us and saying, hey, can we partner and scale it up? While large funds make us run around to get their money, how VCs make startups run around, so does large PE funds make developers with their terms and the timelines they take to deploy money. They're like, can we operate and can we build large portfolio together? So people are now talking about partnerships. Erstwhile where they were having doubts, do you have capability also? Who are you? We don't believe this is scalable. So now developers also believe this is there. Again, we've shown them as such, but also that is a big change we're seeing. So it's solving for demand as solving for supply both together, that convergence. We're seeing early signs. We're still at level 1 demand supply, I would say, in terms of matching. We're now entering level 2 demand supply matching where awareness is there. Now it's about reaching to the larger audience. at a large scale as such. So we are not the Bharat story. When I say Bharat story, like I'm not a product for the 140, 150 crore Indians. I'm for the 30 lakh Indians who have money. Competing with the 10, 15,000 people who have 10, 20, 50 crores and about to deploy, and making a senior manager in a IT company making 25, 30 lakhs, buy the same assets, get the same kind of revenues vis-a-vis the CEO of that company who had 10, 50 crores to deploy money, giving them that same investment experience, same returns for their investment, as while they were putting in residential making 1-2%. And you've seen that change, right? Like 3-5 years back, residential used to be 70% investment, 30% end use. Today it's 60% end use, 40% investment. While obviously the share of the inventory has also gone up, but you see that mindset change. People are realizing that it's not worth it. So that all that money is eventually going into stock market or other asset classes. I'm the only one, I would say, batting for the real estate market to get that money back into real estate, which is going away from real estate into CRE. So it's in the interest of all the developers also that, hey, let's work together. Otherwise, that money will go into stocks, that money will go into FDs, etc. And real estate investment is very, very critical for the country to grow, because we employ the largest number of people, great for the growth economy, because credit is also the highest consumed in this sector also at the same time. So that's what we are trying to solve. So it's a collective thing. Early signs from where we were, we've now from basement we've come to ground floor, but we'll be building that.
Lastly, I want to ask you, like, early struggle for Strata was to create that awareness, to educate investors about fractional ownership. But now the more companies which are into fractional ownership, the startup companies, you have made it easy for them, for the market, for the investors to understand. Now they know what to, what fractional ownership is, kahan kis tarah se investment karna hai. But what edge do you have now, right now, over your competitors?
So one thing which is happening is all the assets which we say no is the one which they take, right? So at least we know that we're getting the best of best, which we at least have the privilege because of the scale at which we are as such. So not that I'm saying bad for them or bad for the investor to take an asset which we rejected, which was not under our parameter. Everything has a value in itself. But having said that, I think, like I said, it's not a one-man show who can continue solving and creating a barrier, solving for that barrier and moving ahead. It's an industry which goes together and builds together. You don't have one bank which is a monopoly. You have multiple banks solving for it, and they have a world where they can work with the government and create better things. I think that will help us to create, norms with regulators over a period of time, etc., and create an industry in itself. So while we are happy that we started it, I'm happy that the people who are trying to solve what we are also solving, they also have the same vision. But investors are smart. They are understanding who to deploy money with, because it's 80% deploying about the asset, but it's also 20% about asset management, because my work is not about selling, my work is about managing after you buy the asset. That's when I come in as Strata as such. So it's about 50% solving कि हमने asset ला दिया, but उसके बाद real काम चालू होता है, right? So that's what people need to understand who don't. That it's not that I'm saying a new company cannot, but please understand the credentials of the company, the guy who's running the show, the team who's running. Don't just go run around the asset as such more than anything else. So it's a holistic thing which you need to look at, and then you start to learn that.